Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Conversations with Beks. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us and be with us this evening. We've got another very exciting guest with us this evening that we'll be talking to. His name is Steve Chinoy of the Kariba area. We're taking really this conversation closer to home and highlighting one of our lodges in the northern parts of Zimbabwe along Lake Kariba. And it's arguably one of the most remote areas in Zimbabwe, very difficult to get to, but very scenic landscape to get there, either through the rugged mountains of the Zambezi Valley or across the beautiful Lake Kariba. Flying over the lake, you will feel like you're flying over the ocean. In some of the areas, it's as wide as about 50 kilometers, and the length of it around 250 kilometers. So quite a bit of water to fly over. But we'll get more into that as we go into it. But please let me introduce you to our guest today, Steve Chinoy, who's an adventurer at heart, and it's somebody I've known for years of guiding, where for many years we came across each other in different places, but mainly around the Kariba area, a few times around Monopools. But I'll introduce you to Steve himself, and he can maybe tell us a little bit about himself and how he's actually, after all these years of seeing you in the guiding arena, how you've ended up with African bush camps, and particularly at Bumi, and how long you've been with us as an organization.
Thanks for having me, Bex. Very exciting and interesting to have you on this live chat. Indeed, we've known each other for years, Monopools, Matusedona, and Bumi. I've been guiding, I started my guiding career in Monopools, doing canoeing safaris, and I worked my way through to become a professional walking guide. And I moved from Monopools to Matusedona, which is also where Bumi is. Bumi is just outside Matusedona on the western side of it. It's a very interesting place, like Bex has described. Before the construction of Lake Kariba, which is a hydroelectricity project, the area was known just to very few people. It was only the Zambezi River passing through. The first article that you would have come across is from a magazine called The Dispatch, which is around 1667, by a Portuguese explorer called Manuel Barreto. He did explore the area before David Livingstone and his brother Charles, which is some 200 years earlier. So Manuel Barreto wrote that the area was so barren that it was only known as an area where birds could fly and serpents would crawl. So which means there was basically no development. It was just an adventurous place, rugged and wild. Of course, there were local people living on the banks, which are the Batonga people, the people who were living on what's the present day Lake Kariba now. So the three people I'd mentioned who visited the area before the lake, they've been Manuel Barreto, David Livingstone, and Frederick Cotton Selou. So you can see it was an area which was really for the adventurous people. So yeah, that's just a brief of the area before the construction of the dam.
And just to give some context, Steve, where were you born? Which village do you come from? And what is its location comparatively to where you're sitting right now?
It's very different. I'm born in the Eastern Highlands, which is a place called Nyanga. It's the eastern part of Zimbabwe. Where I am right now, it's one of the top lodges in Zimbabwe. Bumi Hills, sitting on top of the hill. Bumi is actually a Tonga word, which means life. So where I'm sitting, there is life here.
That's fantastic to hear. I mean, it's such a contrast from where you were born, where you were brought up, which really is the sort of the version of Scotland of Zimbabwe. And all of a sudden you're in this very exotic, very tropical climate. I mean, Kariba is for the most part very tropical. It recorded some of the highest temperature in Zimbabwe by the virtue of where it is in its altitude. And very humid. But also, you know, I suppose the one thing that is common are the mountains, except that the mountains where you are right now are very, very rugged. So I think back at my pleasant memories and experiences of Matsudana. As you know, I lived on the water on Lake Kariba and worked there for about 1.5 to 2 years in the late 90s, early 2000s, managing and guiding a floating lodge in one of the bays there. And as part of my work, which is probably some of the best guiding years of my life, was waking up every morning, paddling across to the mothership and meeting my guests over a cup of coffee, tea, and then heading out in search and tracking on foot wild black rhino. That has got to be some of my best guiding years ever, where I felt I really got to understand the terrain. I got to understand the animal, which is a very threatened animal in today's time. It was even still back then. And really, it was a journey that a lot of people went on, and after that, they could really understand the bond and the intrigue in this prehistoric animal, the black rhino. Why don't you tell us today, Steve, what are some of the best sightings that can be seen around the Bumi area?
So Bumi Hills area is a private concession, which we boast very much of because it gives us the opportunity to have some freedom with our guests. We do game drives, we do walking safaris, we do fishing, we do boat cruise, we do village trips, we do have night game drives, which I wanted to put more emphasis on. On night game drives, you've got the chance to see the elusive nocturnal species like your African civet, white-tailed mongoose, your porcupines, hippos on land grazing in the night, which not many people do get to see. You know, when you do see hippos in the flashlight with the guests, they get so excited because most people, they do see hippos in the water. And when you see the full hippo on land grazing, they get so excited. Not only that, we see them in the night, we also sometimes see them during the day on cooler days. But the advantage of being in a private concession, you've got more access as to being in the park where you are operating within the limited stipulated time frame. So we boast as having an extra few activities that we can do on top of what all other lodges do. In our area, which is Bumi Hills, we also have paleontology, which is talking of fossils, you know, where like the famous Volcanodon caribensis has been found not far from Bumi Hills. One of the islands, 126 and 127, is where the pieces of the dinosaur were found. So we're sitting on a rich fossil bed. So if anybody is into that area, it's an area worth visiting and exploring. We also do village trips, which not many people do offer. Our nearest village is about 20 kilometers from here. So we do have up to about 6 or 7 activities that we can offer. On top of that, we do have a spa. We've got an infinite pool. We've got some pool lounges. So we do have quite a lot of things to offer that makes us a special place to be, either halfway through your stay on safari or the beginning or the end. So it's a place which I would very much highly recommend. Also, the other thing is we are very, very flexible. Having a lot of water like Lake Kariba has made this place very, very special in a way that we can do early morning activities, we can do mid-morning activities, we can do late afternoon activities. So we are very, very flexible. Most places would offer you a morning or afternoon activity. Having a lot of water, you don't know when the animals are coming to drink. Whichever way they walk, they're just gonna be at the water side. So, and whatever we see here, we don't see like elephants in hundreds. We see them in smaller heads, but very, very interesting and very, very scenic areas, you know, like with dead trees of the lake, either with the sun setting behind or sunrise.
Well, that's always been one of my most fascinating things, certainly for my eyes, is seeing those beautiful floodplains, especially in the last few years where the floodplain grazing has returned, and your big herds of buffalo have returned. And just being up at the top of that hill and just seeing the whole floodplain completely dotted with herds of buffalo and these pockets of elephants, as you say, along the floodplain. I mean, it's kind of bizarre in that you've got these beautiful red beaches, which look fantastic, especially in the summer months when it's very hot. Very tempting to go in and have a swim, and yet they're just completely croc infested. When you open your eyes and you really look and you see how many crocodiles there are, it's kind of this bizarre experience of remote wildlife, beach, floodplain, and the backdrop of this huge, beautiful Zambezi escarpment. And it must be said and acknowledged that that part of the biggest credit of the safe haven that Bumi Hills has become, to the extent that it enjoys so much wildlife in the area, is really acknowledgement of the Bumi Hills Foundation, that has an anti-poaching unit that we support. But independently, this organization has really transformed and made sure that the wildlife is safe, and relentlessly they continue to patrol and take care of the area in such a way that it has become a conservation success. So we very much would like to acknowledge them and thank them for that. One of the greatest privileges for us as an organization through our foundation has been to work alongside and partner with the communities there. And you touched on them a little bit as part of the activities. One of the things that we're very keen to do is to make sure that when people visit us, they at least do a minimum of 3 nights, because as you say, there is so much activities around the area to do. And you know, if people had to come to Bumi and go away without actually having taken a trip to one of those villages in the Mona area, or at least any one of those villages, I think it would be a great shame, because they would really miss out on a very deep culture that is vanishing. It's probably worth us talking a little bit about that vanishing culture. The Tonga tribe, which you touched on a little bit earlier, were these very remote villages that or at least community that lived alongside the Zambezi River, which before the damming of Lake Kariba, which started, by the way, in the early 1950s, these small little groups of people were all dotted along the Zambezi River and completely lived off the river. So they did not do any crops because of the wildlife in the area. They did not do keep any animals such as cattle or donkeys or anything like that, or goats. They solely lived off the river. A very lean, very healthy population, and extremely rich in culture. And of course, with the damming of Kariba, they were forced to actually move back up into the mountains, which in itself, for the sake of progress, was very, very tragic. And the Tonga tribe eventually settled on the top of the mountains in the escarpments, where now they've diversified their culture. They're doing other things such as looking after animals, and also attempting some sort of growing of crops in rather very difficult situations and difficult times. So what we've actually set out to do as a foundation is ensure that we can fill the gap of the livelihoods that actually have been reduced to poverty because of much bigger populations. They've now had to adapt to land which they weren't really adapted to living. So they've had to almost do a complete shift in their lifestyles. And that comes with its own set of problems, as we've experienced in other parts of the world. So do you want to maybe describe the Tonga people, and maybe talk a little bit about the Nyami Nyami, which is such a mysterious story that surrounds Lake Kariba. Please introduce us into that whole mystery and the Tonga tribe.
So the Nyami Nyami is the Tonga river god. It would have the head of a fish and the body of a snake. Okay? So Nyami Nyami would present itself in times of famine or a drought, as to look after its people, and then it would present its body on top of the water, and people would cut pieces as much as you want, and you never see where it starts and where it ends. So it's so much held in Tonga beliefs, both Zimbabwean side and the Zimbabwean side and the Zambian side, because we're both people living on both sides. So this is
it's really the same. It's really the same tribe that was split by geographical locations, really.
Yes, correct. So both those people had to be affected when the lake was being constructed. Roughly about 57,000 people had to be moved away because when the Zambezi was going to flood, it was going to cover an area roughly over 5,000 square kilometers, which is quite a vast piece of land. But it wasn't easy to just come to somebody and say, right, we're going to put a dam here. It's going to benefit electricity industry and. And then, so there was a bit of some resistance, and finally the people agreed. But the construction of the lake wasn't just like a smooth sailing. It was not easy. It was in areas you mentioned, very hot and humid. So during the construction years, I have read articles which said even the building tools had to be put in buckets of water, make them user-friendly, because it would be quite hot. So mosquitoes, hot temperatures were a thing that many people were not used to. Besides that, there was also 2 floods which washed the construction of the dam. One was in 1957, and the other one was a huge flood, which was in 1958, and it was measured like a flood of 1,000 years, where the lake did rise to roughly 34 meters from its lowest low mark. And then the water that was passing through the dam was estimated to be about 14 million cubic meters per second. So you can imagine how much water was going through at that time. So finally, the Tonga people did agree to move. But because they are also very, very much cultural people, they had to do ceremonies to appease their ancestors, you know, like dragging branches, brewing beer, and then they moved on to the new land where they are settled up on highland. Now there is agriculture, they bring some agriculture. They are raising cattle, goats, donkeys. There's health facilities, there's some schools, there's some sunken wells, some boreholes, of which African Bush Camps Foundation has taken the responsibility of assisting with education. One of the schools that is being assisted is called Mankwara Primary School. Already 2 blocks have been constructed in an office. The school has got about 360 students. So ABC Foundation has done the building, the finishing, they've done the solar installation, both for the staff housing, which are the teachers and the school, and the ICT and books and all that. So it's a school, when I went there for the first time, it touched me. You know, my wife is a school teacher, and I know where the school where she teaches and the school where I visited. Yes, I wrote to my wife and said, ooh, I've been to a school that I think ABC has chosen well. A school that really, really needed help. You know, from
it was really, I mean, I think you'll also agree that it was heartbreaking to go there initially and see classrooms, these thatched little round classrooms with grass, with holes through it, where kids could hardly learn from there when it was raining because it was just so porous with rain. And all of a sudden now we're talking about classroom blocks, of which we've already started building some of those successfully and giving them meaningful shelter where they can actually get a decent education. And we all believe that actually education is going to be a very key thing to transforming those communities that have previously been disadvantaged and not had a good opportunity to be educated. But it's not just education programs, despite the fact that that's key. It's also some of the conservation programs there through the Boma, recent project of the Bomas, where we are bomering, encouraging the locals to boma their cattle, their livestock, pull them into very safe crawls to prevent the wildlife-human conflict that we experience, that they continue to experience in some aspects of it. And hopefully we can grow that footprint, but also just being able to help them with their livelihoods. We're looking at a fisheries project there, where we can partner with them to actually farm their own fish that we will obviously buy as a lodge, but they can also sell commercially. And it's that transformation from this remote village of a forgotten tribe to ones that can actually thrive and have a better livelihood for their future, which I'm really looking forward to. But I mean, if you look at, you talk about the rise in lake levels, for some of those people, I mean, it was a surprise because you can believe how inconceivable it would have been for somebody to come and say, you know what, this is all going to be flooded. You need to be right at the top of that hill. To the extent that a lot of families were rescued because they did resist going up. But also the wildlife. There was something like over 7,000 animals that were saved during Operation Noah. We all know the interesting book Fothergill, which is quite an interesting read for anyone who can get their books on there. Fothergill is really an incredible read of the area. But also if any of our audience out there is interested in supporting our foundation and some of the work that we do and partnering with us in conservation projects in the area, information could be found at africanbushcampsfoundation.org or any of our social platforms. If you can follow us, African Bush Camps Foundation, we would be glad to communicate with you and send you information and keep you updated with some of the interesting projects that we're doing there. We're quickly running out of time, Steve. What is the one thing that you're looking forward to? I mean, we've obviously been closed for the last 4 months. Not closed, but actually for you guys who've been on the ground, you've been waiting to welcome guests. So not closed per se, but just waiting to open our borders since our borders have been closed. But just to welcome that first guest in camp. What is it that you look forward to that you've been thinking whilst you've been there? I wish I could share this, or I wish our guests could see this. I mean, I think you guys have probably been able to see some interesting stuff there since you continue to monitor the area, go on game drives, go on boat rides to keep an eye on the area. What is it that people can expect you to be excited about to share with them?
All right, one morning at the top deck where you normally see the view of the lake or the floodplain, there's a little water hole. And then there was a mother leopard and a cub drinking. So one of the guys says to me, come and have a look. So I'm going there, we're looking, enjoying. You know, another cub comes up. So it's a mother and 2 cubs drinking 10 meters in front of us. No guests in the lodge. Just imagine.
That's amazing. Where exactly was that?
You know where the fireplace is on
Yes.
on the bottom deck. There's a little water hole.
So from the lodge down at the water hole.
From the lodge. Right, that's one. I'll tell you another one. We're cutting rods, clearing rods with our machetes, and there's a big bird that one of the guys thought it was a ground hornbill. We got closer. There's some rolling action. That's a brown snake eagle. Caught more than, it got a big rock multi lizard, and it got wrapped around. So there's a tussle. Just imagine, it's only stuff. And that action is happening. And when we stopped at the vehicle, the monitor lizard let go, and they both stood about 2 meters apart. Just imagine that action, you know, the tussle and the tug of war. So there's quite a lot of good things happening. The bird
That's
life.
amazing. I hope you're going to take up photography one day, Steve. Have you taken up photography? Because you've got the most incredible opportunity to capture all of this stuff.
It's on my list. I mean, you'll be seeing my pictures very soon.
I'm very happy to hear that. So I too am excited to share those experiences with you and some of our guests. And a future experience that I'm really looking forward to, in collaboration with other operators in the area. African Parks was recently taken over the management of Batusadona, and of course, Bumi Hills Anti-Poaching Unit. Being able to collaborate together to one day be able to walk and see black rhino in the wild in Matusadona, in the Bumi area, that's really a dream and something that I imagine and think about quite a lot. So I'm excited about the future prospects of being able to work in tandem with the local community to make sure that that area can be fully restored with some of those animals that occurred there, such as the black rhino. Steve, you've been absolutely amazing. Thank you. And I do look forward to seeing you back out at Bumi at some point or any one of our camps. And to our audience, thank you very much for staying with us and for joining us on this talk today. And if you've got any queries, information you need for any of the things that we've discussed, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. And most of all, we look forward to continuing to share Africa with you and to conserve Africa together. Thank you.
Thank you, Bex. Thank you for having me.